The storm didn't sound like wind that night. It sounded like screaming. 3 knocks cut through the blizzard, measured, deliberate. When Alara opened the door, 2 wolves lay dying in the snow, their eyes human, their breath whispering her name. She thought she was saving them. She didn't know she was unlocking the curse that remembered her. What would you have done if 2 dying wolves begged at your door in the middle of a storm? Would you have let them in or let the cold decide their fate? Tell me in the comments below. And if your heart still hears the moon's call, hit subscribe and join the pack before the next tale begins. Alara's breath caught. The smaller one pushed its muzzle into the other's neck, whining softly, as if begging her to help. The larger lifted his head, just once, meeting her eyes with something she hadn't seen in years. Recognition. "No," she said, stepping back. "Not again." But her hand moved before her heart could stop it. She dragged them inside. The door slammed shut behind her, the wind screaming its protest. The fire roared to life without her touch, shadows twisting across the walls like ghosts come home. The silver wolf's body shuddered, his breath coming ragged and deep. She knelt beside him, pressing rags to his wounds. When her palm brushed his fur, the air sang. Light rippled under her skin, blue and wild. She yanked her hand away, but the wolf's eyes flashed open, molten gold in the dark. "You heard me once before," a voice whispered, not aloud, but inside her mind. She stumbled back, heart pounding. "Who's there?" The smaller wolf whimpered. The larger tried to rise, and failed. His blood hissed where it met the fire, burning silver. "No," she whispered. "This can't be real." The voice came again, softer this time, threaded with pain. It was real the first time, too. The fire dimmed. The storm outside screamed. And Alara, shaking before the dying wolves, realized she had invited something far older than hunger into her home. The fire snapped, throwing brief flashes of gold across the cabin walls. Alara knelt beside the silver wolf, his fur slick with frost and blood, and pressed a rag to his side. She didn't know what she was doing. Her hands shook, the rag soaking red faster than she could clean it. Outside, the wind howled like something alive. But inside, there was a silence, a heavy, listening silence that seemed to watch her from every corner of the room. The smaller wolf, black-furred, eyes narrow-eyed, stood between her and the door, as if guarding her. Its breath steamed in short bursts. It didn't growl, didn't move, just watched. "Stay still," Alara whispered to the injured one. "Please." The words came out softer than she meant them to. She dipped her fingers in a bowl of melted snow and pressed them against the wound again. The wolf flinched, but didn't snap. He just looked at her. Those eyes, not animal eyes, seemed to search her face, trying to remember something. She whispered to herself, "I've seen those eyes before." The fire roared suddenly higher, licking the walls, and she stumbled back. Shadows moved like they had breath. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw a man's silhouette in the flames, tall, strong, cloaked in silver light. Then it vanished. "No," she said under her breath. "I buried all that. I buried you." The wolf's ear twitched, as if he understood. Then came the voice again, inside her head. "You didn't bury me, Alara. You buried yourself." She dropped the bowl. It shattered, scattering icy water across the floor. "Who are you?" she whispered. The black wolf gave a low growl, not threatening, but warning. The silver wolf's body tensed. Slowly, painfully, it began to shift. The sound was horrible, like bones grinding through ice. Alara backed against the wall, eyes wide. The creature's fur rippled, melting into skin. The shape beneath grew. Arms, shoulders, a man's chest heaving with breath. And when it was over, a man lay before her, drenched in sweat and moonlight, his hand pressed weakly against the wound that still bled silver. Alara couldn't move. She had heard tales of shifters, monsters cursed by the moon, half man, half beast, but never believed them. He turned his head slightly, eyes glowing faintly gold even in human form. "Don't be afraid," he rasped. "You helped me once before. I've never seen you before in my life." He gave a faint smile that looked like pain. "No, you only saw the snow." The black wolf, the one still standing, paced closer, its form shimmering. Within seconds, it too shifted. This one was younger, leaner, his hair black as midnight, his eyes sharp and distrusting. He crouched between Alara and the wounded man, baring his teeth, not as a wolf, but as a man guarding his king. "She's just a human. You shouldn't have let her touch you." "Enough," the wounded one murmured. "She touched because the moon willed it." Alara shook her head. "You're both mad. You should be dead." The black-haired man cut her off, voice low and furious. "If he dies, the whole pack dies." Something in his words made the air colder. Alara looked from one to the other. "Pack?" The wounded man, taller, older, commanding even in agony, looked at her as if he was memorizing her face. "You feel it too, don't you?" She hesitated. "Feel what?" He reached out a hand, not quite touching her. The moment he did, the fire leaned toward them. The light under her skin pulsed again, faint but real. "Magic," he whispered, "the same that answered me before the storm." Alara stumbled back. "No, I'm no witch." "Not witch," he said, his voice weakening. "Chosen." The word hit her harder than the cold. Chosen for what? By who? Before she could speak, the wind outside howled so violently that the cabin door cracked open. A figure in the blizzard screamed into the night, an inhuman shriek that didn't belong to wind or beast. The black-haired man grabbed her arm. "They've found us." "Who?" "The ones who made him bleed." Alara's heart pounded. She ran to bar the door with a wooden beam, but the wolves, now men, were already moving. The silver-eyed one, still weak but burning with purpose, rose to his feet. "Get away from the window," he ordered. She didn't argue. His tone carried the kind of authority that didn't ask, it commanded. The shadows outside moved, dark shapes in the snow, circling the cabin. The silver-haired man closed his eyes, murmuring words she didn't recognize. The fire turned blue, the shadows retreating from the windows. But his strength faltered. Alara caught him as he stumbled. "You'll kill yourself doing this." He opened his eyes, gold burning bright again. "If I die, they'll take you too." "Why me?" He smiled faintly. "Because they can smell fate and you smell like mine." Before she could breathe, the cabin exploded with motion. A creature, something that had once been a man, smashed through the window, snarling. Its eyes burned red, its claws black with frostbite. Alara screamed. The black-haired protector lunged, shifting mid-leap, teeth sinking into the intruder's throat. The two tumbled into the snow outside. The wounded one, no longer hiding his power, turned fully, shifting again, his body glowing with light and fury. His roar shook the trees. The storm fell silent. Alara could only stand there, heart hammering, staring through the shattered window as wolves and shadows tore each other apart in the snow. The sky above them turned from white to crimson. Then the golden-eyed wolf fell. "No," she cried, running out into the storm. He lay bleeding again, frost biting his fur. She fell to her knees, pressing her hands against his side. "Don't you dare die on me." The black wolf limped back, wounded but alive. "He's fading, human. You can't." "I can." Her voice trembled, but her hands glowed. The same blue light poured from her palms, into his wounds, into the snow. The storm howled again, but softer this time, almost singing. When it was over, the light faded. The wolf's breathing steadied. He opened his eyes, still gold, but now filled with something new. Recognition. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "Now the bond is complete." She blinked. "The what?" "The bond," he murmured. "Between savior and beast. Between curse and cure." He reached up, touching her hand, and when his skin met hers, the mark flared bright blue across both their wrists. Alara gasped. The world around them seemed to hold its breath. Then, faintly, from the edge of the forest, a dozen more howls answered back, not angry, not wild, but welcoming. And somewhere deep inside, Alara knew. The night she let the wolves in, her life had ended. The fire was nearly out by the time the storm began to fade. Only a dull orange pulse remained, like the heartbeat of something dying. Alara hadn't slept. She sat on the cabin floor beside the wounded wolf, staring into his strange, still body. His breath came shallow, too shallow. Each rise and fall of his ribs was slower than the last. The other wolf, the smaller black one, had vanished into the snow hours ago. She didn't know if it was coming back, or if it ever would. Pre-dawn light crept through the frost-laced window. The silence was suffocating. Alara reached for her lantern, its glass fogged from the night chill. The moment her hand brushed it, the wolf's body twitched. She froze. Then a voice, soft, deep, echoing inside her skull, whispered, "You saved me once before." The lantern slipped from her grasp and shattered. Oil spilled across the floor, pooling like blood in the pale light. She stumbled backward, breath caught in her throat. No, that's not real." But the voice came again, clearer this time, gentle, familiar, almost sorrowful. "You don't remember me, do you?" Alara shook her head violently, palms pressed over her ears. "I'm hearing things. I'm losing my mind." "You never lost it," the voice murmured. "You only stopped believing." Her knees hit the floorboards. The sound in her head was too vivid, too alive to be imagined. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She whispered to the room, "Who are you?" The wolf didn't move. Its eyes, closed since midnight, remained still. Only the faint rise of its chest answered her. Her tears spilled, splashing against the matted silver fur. "You're not real," she choked. "You can't be real." Then the world exploded with light. It burst from beneath her hands, bright, blinding, and alive. The air crackled as if struck by lightning. The wooden walls groaned. The frost on the windows melted in an instant. Every flame in the cabin reignited at once, roaring like the breath of the moon itself. Alara fell back, shielding her face. The glow surged around the wolf's body, wrapping it in bands of white fire. The voice returned, no longer whispering, but layered and vast, echoing from the walls, from the wind, from inside her own heartbeat. "You saved me once before, and the moon remembers every mercy." The light dimmed. The fire fell silent. Smoke hung in the air like fog. Alara coughed, blinking through it, and froze. Where the wolf had been, a man now lay on the floor, naked, bleeding, human. His body steamed faintly in the cold air, the mark of frost still clinging to his skin. Silver hair tangled across his face, and every breath he took seemed to shake the ground beneath him. Alara crawled closer, her heart hammering. The moment she touched his shoulder, her wrist burned, the same strange mark glowing faintly blue beneath her skin. His eyes fluttered open. They weren't human eyes. They glowed like molten silver, catching the first breath of dawn. Alara's world narrowed to that single gaze, both pleading and powerful, ancient and new. He exhaled once, voice raw, low, almost reverent. "Finally, you remember." The storm had passed, but the world felt heavier than before. Sunlight crept through the cracks in the shutters, pale and cold, painting thin golden lines across the cabin floor. The fire had long gone out. Only the faint scent of smoke and wet fur lingered in the air. Alara stood motionless by the hearth, the edges of her blanket trembling in her hands. On the floor before her lay the man, the one who had been the wolf, the one who had spoken inside her mind. His skin glistened faintly with frost. His breath came shallow but steady. For a long while, she just watched him. Not out of fear, at least, not only fear, but awe. There was something ancient about him, something that didn't belong to this fragile human world. Finally, she whispered, "What are you?" The man stirred, eyelids fluttering. When he opened them, light caught in his pupils, liquid silver, too bright to be mortal. He sat up slowly, the movement graceful, cautious, as though remembering what it meant to be human. "I'm Kyle," he said quietly, his voice deep, roughened by centuries of silence. Last alpha of the Moon Court, and the last fool to think mercy could break a curse. Alara blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "The Moon Court? That's a myth." He smiled faintly. "Everything is, until you live long enough to outlast belief." He pushed his hair from his face, revealing scars that glimmered faintly like threads of light. "I was cursed long ago, to wear the skin of a beast until compassion freed me. Centuries passed, and no one dared touch me, until you." Alara took a step back. "You're saying I broke your curse?" "Not just broke it," he said. "Fulfilled it." Her pulse quickened. "But I don't even know you." "You did," he murmured. "Once." She frowned. "That's impossible." Kale's gaze softened, almost mournful. "You were different then. Mortal still, but with a name the stars remembered. You freed me once before, and when you died, the curse found me again. The moon's mercy is cruel. She made me wait for you to return." Alara's throat tightened. "Reincarnation?" "Memory reborn," he corrected. "The soul remembers what the mind forgets." Before she could speak again, the cabin door creaked. The black-furred wolf, now in human form, stepped inside, snow still clinging to his boots. His expression was sharper than Kale's, his jaw tense, eyes a colder gold. "Enough stories," he said flatly. "She doesn't need your myths." Kale didn't turn. "My brother believes truth should be hidden until it's convenient." "Truth won't matter if the hunters find us," Fen snapped. "They felt the curse break. They'll come to finish what the moon started." Alara's chest tightened. "Hunters?" "Those who feed on what's left of the cursed," Fen said. "They've hunted our kind for centuries. Killing one of them buys a man a year of power. Killing you," he added, looking at Kale, "would make them gods." Kale's expression didn't change, but the air in the room seemed to shift around him, heavier, charged. "Let them try." "Your arrogance got the court killed once already," Fen growled. The tension between them vibrated like a pulled string. Alara stepped back, heart hammering, her thoughts a storm. Two men who had been wolves. A curse older than memory. A mark glowing beneath her skin that linked her to something she didn't understand. She turned toward the window, watching sunlight bleed through the frost. The world outside seemed fragile, dreamlike, as if holding its breath between peace and disaster. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why not someone else?" Kale's voice softened. "Because mercy always chooses the one who believes in it least." Alara looked at him then, really looked. There was something in his face she couldn't deny. Something achingly familiar, like a memory caught in a dream. She tore her gaze away. "You speak as if I'm supposed to remember another life." "Not remember," Kale said. "Recognize." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of thawing wood in the hearth. Then Kale stood, unsteady but resolute. "We can't stay here. The moon's mark burns brighter with daylight. They'll follow its scent." Fen scowled. "And where do you plan to take her? She's human. She won't survive the moon would." "She will," Kale said. "She already survived me." Fen's jaw tightened. "You're still cursed, brother. Don't drag her into the ruins of your past." "I'm not dragging her," Kale said quietly. "I'm following her light." Alara's chest ached with confusion and something perilously close to longing. She looked down at her wrist, the faint shimmer still pulsing beneath her skin, and for the first time, she didn't try to hide it. "Fine," she said softly. "If I'm somehow part of this, I deserve to know what I've walked into." Kyle inclined his head. "Then you'll know everything." Fen sighed, pacing to the door. "You might not live long enough to tell her." Kale's eyes flicked toward his brother. "You underestimate her." Before Alara could ask what that meant, Fen's body tensed. His nostrils flared. He turned sharply toward the window, eyes narrowing. Someone's here. Alara froze. Kale's expression hardened, wolf-fast and deadly calm. How many? Fenn's gaze flicked to the tree line outside. Too many. The silence that followed was alive with dread. Even the light seemed to dim. Kale reached for Alara's hand. His skin was warm, unnaturally so. "Stay behind me," he said, "no matter what happens." Alara opened her mouth to speak, but then came the sound. Footsteps, crunching through snow, slow, deliberate, surrounding them. Fenn's eyes flashed gold as he bared his teeth. "They found us." Kale's mark blazed to life across his chest, silver light spilling into the room like moonfire. The door shuddered. Then came a voice from beyond the threshold, low, cruel, echoing like wind through stone. "Alpha Kale," it said, "you've broken the curse once more. Pity. This time, there will be no rebirth." Alara's breath hitched. Kale turned his head slightly toward her and whispered, "Whatever happens, believe." The door splintered, and the morning light turned to shadow. Smoke rose from the valley like the breath of some waking giant. The cabin stood in eerie silence, its wooden walls whispering as the frost thawed from their seams. Alara leaned against the window frame, eyes fixed on the horizon. There, through the veil of white, dark shapes moved, men, armored and slow, cutting their way through snow. Fenn's voice was low and tense. "Human soldiers, they've crossed the ridge." He stood near the door, his golden eyes narrow, his hand resting on the hilt of a blade that shimmered faintly blue in the morning light. Kyle joined him, his form casting long shadows across the floorboards. "They've followed the aura through the storm." Alara turned sharply. "Aura?" Kyle looked at her, his silver eyes calm but cold. When the curse broke, the old magic rippled across the realms. The humans felt it. To them, power is something to chain, not to understand. Fenn scoffed. "They'll chain you if you let them, and burn her for being near you." The words sent a chill through Alara deeper than the winter wind. She looked around the cabin, the patched walls, the worn blankets, the few trinkets that had survived her years in hiding. "I won't leave," she said quietly. "This is my home." Fenn turned towards her, incredulous. "Your home is about to be ash." "Then I'll burn with it," she snapped, surprising even herself. Kyle stepped closer, the frost creaking beneath his boots. His voice softened, low and steady. "You've lost enough. Don't let pride take the rest." "I'm not leaving," she whispered. "I've run my whole life, not anymore." For a moment, no one spoke. The wind howled between the trees, and somewhere far below, the echo of horns rolled through the valley. Finally, Kyle said, "Then I'll make the storm protect you." Before Alara could ask what he meant, he raised his hand. The air shifted, sharp and electric, the way it does before lightning splits the sky. His mark, faint until now, flared across his chest like molten silver. The floorboards groaned. The fire in the hearth roared to life, blazing blue-white. "Kyle," Fenn warned, "you'll kill yourself." Kyle didn't answer. He stepped past the threshold, his bare feet sinking into the snow. The air around him began to shimmer, wind twisting around his body like a living thing. Alara followed to the doorway, clutching her shawl. "What are you doing?" "Calling the storm," he said simply. "It listens to its own." He spread his arms wide. The clouds above darkened, the pale sun swallowed whole. Wind tore through the trees, bending them like reeds. Frost exploded from the ground, spiraling around the cabin until it formed a translucent barrier of ice and light. Alara gasped as the world turned ghostly blue. The snow no longer fell. It hovered, suspended mid-air, caught between stillness and motion. Inside the storm's heart, Kale looked almost unreal, part man, part legend, his hair whipping in the gale, his mark blazing brighter than fire. The cabin trembled but held. Fenn stared, both awed and furious. "He's draining the moonlight. He'll collapse before they even reach us." Alara's pulse raced. She could feel the pull of the magic, the raw, aching thread that connected them through the bond. Each surge of his power tugged at her chest like a heartbeat out of sync with her own. "Stop," she called out. "Kale, stop!" He didn't seem to hear her. The barrier solidified, the frost glowing faintly as the first arrows struck. They shattered against the invisible wall, fragments scattering harmlessly into dust. Alara ran into the snow, the cold slicing at her skin. She reached him just as he staggered, falling to one knee. "Enough," she whispered, catching his shoulders. He looked up, eyes dimming, breath white and ragged. "They'll break through if I stop." "Then let me help." Her hands found his, instinct guiding her more than thought. The moment her palms met his skin, her wrist burned, the mark that had slept there since the night of the wolves now blazing across her arm in silver light. Kale's eyes widened. "Elara," but she closed her eyes and the storm answered her. Wind roared through the trees. Ice spiraled upward, reforging the barrier into a wall of shimmering light that rippled with energy. The air around them hummed like a song only the moon could hear. Kale's strength steadied beneath her touch. Their power moved together. His fury, her fear, blending into something unbreakable. Fen stepped back, shielding his eyes as the frost brightened to white fire. "By the stars," he muttered. "She's matching him." Alara opened her eyes, the glow fading into a steady pulse that reflected in Kale's gaze. They stood surrounded by a dome of living ice, the outside world reduced to shadow and sound. For the first time since she'd met him, Kale smiled, not with pride, but with reverence. "The moon didn't send me to save you," he said softly. "She sent you to save me." The words barely left his lips before a loud crack shattered the air. The barrier rippled as something massive struck it from outside. Fen's head snapped toward the sound. "They brought a mage." Kale's hand tightened around Alara's. "Stay close." The frost wall trembled, blue veins of power spidering through the ice. Alara's arm flared again, her mark now identical to his, twisting symbols of silver light, pulsing in unison. Kale's breath caught. "It can't be." "What?" she gasped. "The bond," he whispered. "It's complete." Before she could ask what that meant, the barrier screamed and split, and the soldiers poured through the snow. The storm had long since passed, but the land still trembled from its memory. The valley below the moonlight ridge lay blanketed in white silence. No footprints, no birdsong, no wind. Only the remnants of battle. Shattered armor half buried in frost, arrows frozen mid-flight, and streaks of silver blood gleaming faintly under the dawn. Alara stood at the ridge's edge, breath misting in the cold air. Her mark still glowed faintly across her arm, though she'd tried all morning to will it dark again. Kyle watched her from a few paces away, his hair wet with melted snow, his cloak torn and spattered with blood. He looked less like a man and more like the shadow of something divine, worn by time but unbroken. "You should rest," he said. "I can't," she murmured. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them." Kale's gaze softened. "The soldiers?" She shook her head. "The wolves." He stepped closer, his boots crunching in the frost. "What do you mean?" Alara's eyes were distant. "They weren't all attacking. Some of them were calling to me, begging, not fighting. I could feel it, Kale, like their pain was inside my chest." He was silent for a long moment. Then finally he said, "It's begun." Alara turned to face him. "What has?" "The bond," he said quietly. "Not just between you and me. Between your heart and the old blood, the blood of the moon." Her brow furrowed. "I don't understand." Kyle motioned toward the horizon, where the pale sun shimmered weakly through the fog. Long before the curses, before the courts fell, humans and shifters were one tribe. We shared the same lifeblood, the same breath. You felt their pain because your compassion reawakened what was lost. The bond recognizes its source again. She stared at him, stunned. "You mean..." I'm part of both. Part of everything, he corrected. Your soul remembers what your flesh forgot. Alara's voice trembled. You think my healing them changed the bloodlines? Kael nodded once. You didn't just heal me, Alara. You woke an ancient covenant. The moon remembers mercy. The words felt too large for her chest. She took a shaky breath and whispered, So what happens now? Kael turned his face to the wind. Now you learn to control it, before it controls you. By dusk, they had found a hollow beneath the ridge where the wind could not reach. Kael built a fire while Fen kept watch from the trees above, his silhouette just a shadow against the snow. Alara sat cross-legged by the flames, her fingers tracing the mark that still pulsed across her wrist. Each beat of it felt alive, like something breathing under her skin. Kael crouched across from her, holding a small bowl carved from ice. Drink this, he said. What is it? Moon water, he replied. It'll help you see. She hesitated, then drank. The liquid was cold but burned down her throat like fire. The world tilted, the forest blurred, replaced by flickering silver light. And then she was standing somewhere else. A great hall of stone and moonlight stretched around her, its arches alive with carvings of wolves and stars. The air shimmered with music, low, mournful, endless. At the center stood Kael, not as he was now, but as he had been centuries ago. Crowned in silver, his armor gleaming like starlight, his eyes unscarred and full of fire. And beside him, a woman. Alara gasped. The woman looked like her, yet not. Her hair was lighter, her bearing regal, her gaze full of sorrow and strength. She placed her hand on Kael's cheek and whispered words Alara couldn't hear, though her heart knew them. Kael's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. You were her, the healer who defied the curse, the one who chose mercy over power. When she died, the moon vowed that compassion would return in another form. That form is you. The vision shattered. Alara fell forward, gasping, the firelight flashing back into view. Kael caught her before she hit the ground. Her voice shook. I saw her. I was her. Kael nodded slowly. The past never truly dies. It just waits for someone to listen. She looked up at him, tears freezing on her lashes. Why show me this? Because, he said, your gift is more than healing. It's remembering. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt other presences, faint, like whispers carried on the wind. Help us. The moon binds us still. Wake the bond. She bolted upright, her heart pounding. The mark on her arm glowed brighter, its lines shifting like living veins of light. Kael, she whispered, they're calling to me. But Kael was already awake, his eyes glinting in the firelight. Don't answer them, he said quietly. Not yet. I can't ignore them, she said. They sound terrified. Because they are, Kael murmured. Every cursed shifter across the lands can feel you now. You're their beacon, their last hope. Alara pressed a trembling hand over her mark. What if I can't save them? Kael reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. You will. You always do. Later, when the fire had died to embers, Alara drifted into uneasy sleep. The valley was silent again, the sky heavy with clouds that hid the moon. In her dreams, she stood in the same hall of stone, but it was empty now, dark and cracked with frost. A shape moved at the far end, a wolf made of mist and starlight, its eyes burning blue. It circled her once, then spoke in a voice that was neither male nor female, but eternal. The moon is watching, it said. The curse is not done. Alara's breath fogged the air. Who are you? The one who waits when mercy forgets, it answered. The one who remembers what love costs. The wolf's form began to dissolve, scattering like smoke in wind. Wake soon, child of light, it whispered, for the moon hungers still. The last word echoed like a bell, and Alara woke with a cry, the mark on her arm blazing bright enough to paint the cabin walls silver. The temple lay silent beneath the ice. Once it must have been magnificent, pillars carved with silver wolves, mosaics that caught the light of the full moon. But now it was nothing but ruin. Frozen stone, shadows, echoes. Alara's boots crunched softly as she followed Kael through the shattered archway. Her breath fogged the air, vanishing into the blue mist that hung over everything. The silence was alive. Every step felt watched. "This is where it began," Kael murmured. His voice echoed against the ice, low and hollow. Alara glanced at him. "Where what began?" He paused beside the altar. A slab of moonstone cracked down the center, its surface etched with symbols she didn't recognize. Frost glimmered along every line. "My curse," he said quietly, "and your death." Alara's pulse skipped. "You said that before, that I died saving you, but this place is where the moon decided love was disobedience." Kael finished. He touched the altar with his bare hand. The ice hissed and melted beneath his fingers, revealing faint carvings of wolves kneeling beneath a blazing sigil, the same symbol that now marked both their skin. Alara stepped closer. "You were cursed here?" He nodded once. "I was Alpha of the Moon Court. You were the healer sent to end our suffering. The moon warned me not to love you. I thought love could break the curse. I was wrong." The air between them thickened. Alara's mark began to burn, faintly at first, then brighter. She hissed in pain, clutching her arm. "Kael, it's happening again." He caught her before she fell, his hand wrapping around her wrist. Their marks blazed in unison, casting pale fire across the walls. Visions flooded her mind, flashes of another life. A grand hall bathed in silver light, her hands glowing as they pressed against Kael's wounds. A kiss stolen under a blood-red moon. And then, fire, chains, wolves howling as the moon turned black. Alara gasped, wrenching away. "I saw it. The court. Your people, they died because of us." Kael's eyes darkened. "Because I refused to kill the one I loved. Because you defied fate," she said. "Because you chose me over your pack." "I would choose you again," he whispered, even knowing what it cost. Alara shook her head, tears freezing on her lashes. "You can't mean that." He stepped closer, his breath white in the cold. "I mean it with every life I've lived since." She looked away. "Then the curse never ended. It only waited for us to repeat it." Kael's jaw tightened. "That's why you need to turn back. Leave this place, leave me." She stared at him in disbelief. "After everything? After all you said?" "If you stay," he said, voice breaking, "the moon will notice. She always does. And this time, she won't spare either of us." Alara's mark flared again, light pulsing like a heartbeat under her skin. She pressed her palm to the altar to steady herself, and the ice beneath her hand moved. A faint hum rose through the stone, deep and rhythmic. Cracks spread across the altar's surface, glowing silver from within. Kael's eyes widened. Alara, step back. She tried, but the light caught her, pulling her palm flat against the frozen sigil. The hum became a roar. Symbols ignited along the walls, their light swirling toward the center of the room. "Kael!" she cried. He grabbed her, but the force slammed him backward. The air filled with wind and whispers, ancient voices murmuring in the old tongue of the Moon Court. Alara's hair whipped around her face as the altar split in two, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. From within the crack, light poured out, liquid and alive, forming a pattern that pulsed like flesh and flame. At the center of the broken stone, a sigil emerged, the mark of the Moon Court, perfect and terrible, glowing as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Kael stared at it, horror in his eyes. "It's waking." Alara reached for him. "What's waking?" He didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the light, his expression unreadable. Half awe, half dread. The hum deepened, turning into a sound that was almost breathing. And as frost spread up the walls and the sigil flared brighter, Alara felt it again. a presence watching her, ancient, cold, infinite. The moon was awake, and she was remembering. The light that burst from the altar wasn't fire. It was memory. Every frozen stone of the ruined temple came alive, veins of silver fire crawling up the pillars, licking the ceiling like liquid moonlight. The air throbbed with a single heartbeat that wasn't their own. Alara staggered back, shielding her face, but the glow pierced through her fingers. The floor beneath her feet softened to warmth, humming with power older than time itself. "Kale," she gasped, "what's happening?" He dropped to one knee, his head bowed, eyes squeezed shut. "She's coming." And then the world stilled. The flames froze mid-dance. The air folded inward, light collapsing into a single column descending from the broken roof. The goddess came down through it, not flesh, not spirit. Pure radiance, wearing the shape of mercy and wrath. Her voice was every whisper Alara had ever heard in her dreams, layered with thunder. "One must give," the goddess said through Alara's lips, "and one must keep." Alara's body jerked, her eyes went white. The power of the moon filled her lungs until she couldn't breathe. Kyle caught her as she swayed, shouting her name, but another voice spoke through her, a voice that wasn't hers at all. "I am the echo of all hearts that dared to love beyond decree," she said. "And I ask again, as I did once before, what will you give to end what you began?" Kale's voice broke. "Not her. Take me instead." The goddess turned her gaze on him, and every shadow in the temple recoiled. "You were already taken. Your soul has been spent and spent again. Only the giver may lift the curse." Alara trembled. Her consciousness flickered, between herself and the divine light searing through her veins. "If I give it," she whispered, "what happens to the rest?" "All who carry the wolf's sorrow will be freed. The chains will fall. But you—" The goddess's voice softened to something almost human. "You will forget what it means to feel." Kale shook his head violently. "No, you can't ask that of her." Alara turned to him, tears shining like shards of glass. "Kale, they're suffering because of us. Because of what we did. You don't owe them this." "Yes," she said softly, "I do." The goddess raised her hand, and the mark on Alara's arm blazed brighter than the sun. She screamed, but not from pain, from release. The light poured out of her like breath. It spread across the temple, across the valley, across every heartbeat connected to the moon's curse. Far away, wolves howled, not in rage this time, but in peace. Chains of silver dust crumbled to nothing, the air filled with a sound like sighing. When it was done, the light dimmed. The power left her body, as gently as a tide retreating from shore. Alara collapsed. Kyle caught her, lowering her to the floor. Her eyes were open, still glowing faintly, but they were empty of recognition. Calm, silent. "Alara," he whispered, brushing the hair from her face. "It's over. You freed them." She blinked once, slow, confused. "Who are you?" The words shattered him. He pulled her close, his voice breaking into the crook of her neck. "I'd rather be cursed forever than live in a world where you forget me." The last of the moonlight flickered out. The temple went dark. Only their two shadows remained, one burning, one fading, while the goddess's whisper echoed through the stone. The curse is lifted, but the heart remembers what the mind cannot. The snows had begun to melt. Where ice once devoured everything, water now sang through the valley, soft, steady, alive. The frost-cracked stones of the old moon court had vanished beneath moss and wildflowers. Even the wind seemed gentler, no longer carrying whispers of sorrow, but the hum of something new. At the edge of the clearing, beside the cabin where it had all begun, Alara knelt in the earth. Her fingers dug through soft soil, planting small green shoots one by one. The scent of thawing pine drifted through the air. She paused to watch a patch of sunlight glint off the nearby stream. The sound of it was almost like laughter. Distant. Ayrton remembered. It had been a year since the night of white fire. A year since the moon took her gift, her power, her every trace of magic. And yet, there was peace. She could no longer hear the emotions of others, no longer feel the echo of wolves across the bond, but she'd learned to live in quiet again, to love the silence instead of fearing it. The world had healed. The shifters had been freed. Only she remained unchanged, half whole, half remembering. The breeze shifted. A presence moved behind her, soft footsteps on thawing ground. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. You always return when the flowers do, she said gently. Kael stood in the doorway of the cabin, his shadow long and gold in the spring light, gone were the scars of battle, the weight of centuries. He looked human, yet in his eyes, that same moonlit fire lingered, eternal and kind. He smiled faintly. I was afraid the forest would forget me if I came sooner. It remembers everything, she said, her tone soft as earth. Kael stepped closer, his boots brushing through the grass. And you? She looked up at him then, her eyes calm, distant, but not empty. I remember pieces, sounds, the color of the sky the night I met you. He exhaled, something between a sigh and a prayer. You saved me twice, he said, once from a curse, once from myself. Alara smiled faintly. And who saves you now? His eyes glimmered. You still do, even if you don't remember. The air between them shimmered as the sun dipped, and from beyond the ridge, the full moon rose, vast and silver, reflected in the stream like a second sky. Alara felt it before she saw it, the faint warmth blooming beneath her skin, just above her wrist. She looked down. The mark, long dormant, flared once more, not in blinding silver this time, but in soft light, gentle, human. Kael reached for her hand, and when his fingers touched hers, their marks pulsed in harmony, not bound by magic, not chained by destiny, but chosen. No power surged, no curse awakened, only the quiet rhythm of two hearts that remembered what it meant to keep believing. Alara's eyes lifted to the moon, tears glistening but not falling. It feels different now. Kael nodded. Because this time, she didn't bind us. We did. For a long while they stood together in silence, the night humming around them. The wind carried the scent of rain and wild herbs, the promise of another season. Alara leaned her head against his shoulder. The world was no longer bright with magic, but somehow it was fuller, realer. She whispered, Do you ever wonder why the moon chose us? Kael smiled, gazing at the silver light washing over the valley. Maybe she didn't choose us at all. Maybe she just wanted to see if we'd choose each other. Alara laughed softly, the sound blending with the river's whisper. The moon climbed higher, white and eternal, watching the valley it had once cursed and healed. And as its light brushed the cabin door, Alara spoke the words that had waited a lifetime to be said, quiet, certain, true. The night the frozen wolves begged her in, the moon was never asking for mercy, it was asking for faith.